Hello, everybody. Attorney Joe Palmetto returning from a long vacation. I know that the JPL behind me is still backwards. I wonder how I can fix that, It's easy to do on the software that I use to make a video, but it's a little more difficult to do when I'm streaming live. So I got to figure out how to do it live. We got a couple people here in the room. Again, I want to start off by saying I apologize to everybody for my long hiatus. Hello. Hi, Kelly. Thank you. Hey, Steve. How's it going? Annabeth. Thanks for hopping in here. I was on vacation. I wanted to stream while I was on vacation, but I just couldn't find the time and energy to do it. I had more important things going on, like drinking Coronas and laying on the beach and swimming in the pool and sleeping. I pretty much slept for an entire week, much of the time on the beach or in the sun. So thank you for having me back. I've also been slacking on my videos. A couple video, I'd like to put out, my goal has been to put out 3 recorded videos a week. I have not been reaching that lately. I recently moved offices. That, on top of the fact that I'm on vacation, I went on vacation also, overwhelmingly busy, has meant that I haven't been making the videos as much or as frequently as I want to. So going forward, I'm going to try to put a little more energy into my YouTube channel because I really enjoy it. I get a lot of positive feedback and exposure from it. So you can expect more videos going forward. What else is going on? I recently had a case that was in the newspaper. Let's see if I can find it and drop everybody the link. Palmetto. All right, here's a link to the article of a case. Boom. That's a case that I picked up. I'm representing the individual who's allegedly the shooter in that case. And I hope to put on a really strong defense because an interesting aspect of that case is that there's an altercation that occurs before the firearm goes off. So I'm hoping to use that use that fact to get a fair decision here or a good deal from the district attorney's office. So that was pretty interesting. It's anytime a journalist is quoting an attorney and trying to interpret what the lawyers and judges are saying, I think they have a difficult time. Really, if a newspaper or a media outlet wants to get a good scoop on a legal story, they should hire a former lawyer or somebody who knows what the heck is going on. I know that guy. Yeah, right. I mean, Perry Mason's got to be out there. I know the guy who wrote that article. But it's just from a legal perspective, there's a lot that just doesn't make sense. But the average person is going to read it and not know truthfully, not know what the hell happened. I think Perry Mason's dead. Worse to, is he alive is the question. Is Perry Mason alive? Nobody knows. If anybody has a legal question, I'd be happy to field it. Yeah, he's dead. That's what I thought, man. He's dead. If anybody has a legal question or something that they want to bring up or chat about, I'd be happy to discuss it. A lot going on in the world today. I did see an interesting article saying that the Trump administration is considering a social credit type system in order to social credit style tracking system. Just reading something has me giving social credit style tracking system in order to screen individuals from buying guns. And that's really interesting. From a legal perspective, I would say that the president can probably do that. He can probably do that because the Supreme Court and the Constitution allows reasonable restrictions on the possession of firearms. While there would likely be unlikely, that's funny. While it would be unlikely that the government could ever strip people of their right to bear arms fully, they are allowed to place reasonable restrictions on the right to bear arms, and that's been established by long precedent within the United States Supreme Court. I just read that the prosecutor's office in Boston wants to drop all charges on Antifa protesters arrested at the Straight Pride Parade. Judge says no. Well, that's interesting. I just read the prosecutor in Boston wants to drop all charges arrested at Straight Pride Parade. Judge says no. Well, I'd have to read that article, Kelly. Here's the thing is a judge does not actually get to determine whether or not a prosecutor drops charges or not. That's up to the prosecutor. So prosecutors have special duties in their roles as prosecutors of the criminal law. They are going to be hired by either the state or the federal government. And, their role is to work with law enforcement and to file the correct criminal charges and then prosecute those cases through the courts whenever a crime has been committed. The judges don't decide what charges to bring or what charges to drop. A judge is supposed to be a neutral arbiter of the law. So a judge makes legal decisions. A judge doesn't decide what charges a prosecutor brings or doesn't bring. It's just like if you hire a private attorney, right? Let's say you got, you were over someone's house and you fell down the steps and you called a private attorney up and you said, hey, I want to sue this person for negligence. That private attorney can say no. He doesn't have to bring that case for you. The same is true of a prosecutor's office. Now, that private attorney could also say, well, we're going to find 8 to 10 different things that we can file against this person to bring this lawsuit. Okay. And, they're the master of their case. Now, so I think that's the way you need to think about it is prosecutors have discretion as to what they want to charge. And the judges really don't have a say over that as to what they want to charge. Now, a judge can look at a charge and look at the facts and dismiss a charge. Okay, but if a prosecutor wants to withdraw a charge, a judge really can't have any say in that. So I'd have to read that exact article to interpret what's going on in Boston with these Antifa. It's possible that this oftentimes happens. It happened with Jussie Smollett, right? A prosecutor's office will bring charges and then withdraw them. Happens all the time. It can be for 1,000 different reasons. Sometimes a case is charged because they think they have evidence or they think they have a witness that will testify. And then let's say the witness disappears or decides not to cooperate. The prosecutor says, I don't have a case anymore. They'll withdraw the case. Or sometimes they look at a case even harder, realize what we thought happened didn't happen, withdraw the case. So, it sounds like a discretionary decision. I don't believe the judge has any power to stop the prosecutor from withdrawing charges. How do the First Amendment auditors get away with harassing police in courthouses? The First Amendment really protect them, calling themselves independent journalists. Well, journalism aside, yeah, the First Amendment does protect any private citizens from video recording in public places, and it also protects them from audio recording or taking photographs in public places. And it also protects them, allowing them to go into a public place. And well, protesting is a little bit different. There's certain designated places for protesting. Okay. But as far as photographs, video, etc., a lot of that is allowed as long as it's done in a public place and at a safe distance. The problem with a lot of these First Amendment auditors is they get too close, they open their mouths, or they try to get into areas that where they don't have those same rights. They also persist for such a long period of time that it could be an unreasonable invasion of privacy, or it could interfere with the duties of certain public servants. So really what you're having is a balancing of rights. Public servants are going to have a certain degree of privacy and or right to do their job in an effective manner. And if this auditor, while exercising their right, interferes with this person's ability to do the job, okay, then they would likely lose those First Amendment protections. Truth of the matter is, though, if you watch a lot of my videos, these auditors, if they record quietly, correctly, from a safe distance, in many cases, in many instances, it's legal for them to do that. The problem is when they start to interfere with the police or the public servants that they are videotaping, that creates a lot of issues. Still on my screen, not sure I can, if you link it, Kelly, if you link it. Why do you think the Pittsburgh mayor is trying to restrict guns in Pittsburgh? Well, he's doing it, in my opinion, for a couple of reasons. I don't think he would be taking this action if we didn't have the very tragic, sad Tree of Life shooting that occurred. I think it's been about a year now. In which multiple people were killed at, I believe it was a Jewish synagogue by a shooter. And so I think that sort of spurred the Pittsburgh mayor to want to do something about guns. And I don't know everything about the ordinance. I think it's something along the lines of a ban on AR-15s or certain weapons. And so, he was sort of spurred by that. I do believe that I think a lot of the people who are, advocating for gun control sincerely believe that that the laws that they would or want to pass would have a very positive effect on reducing the degree of gun violence. Now, whether or not that's true really remains to be seen. I don't believe it's self-evident that, restricting, just saying, oh, it's illegal to carry a weapon in this vicinity is actually going to stop people from carrying a weapon in the vicinity, especially suicidal maniacs like many of these mass killers are. So I sincerely believe that the mayor of Pittsburgh thinks that this legislation would help keep people safe. And I believe that he believes that. But as is often said, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. On top of that, I think he's doing it for political purposes because he wants it to be seen like he wants his voting population to view him as someone who is doing something about gun violence. And a lot of the voters in the city of Pittsburgh are very liberal, very progressive, and they probably support this. So it's something that is going to energize his voting base and make him more popular. So he has two reasons for doing it. One, he thinks it's good policy. I don't believe it's self-evident that it is good policy. Number two, he's doing it because his voters are going to like it. What crimes does the district attorney in Harrisburg extradite? Just tweeted if you're, I got to get into my Twitter, Kelly. I've been out of it for like a couple of weeks. Well, really, so as far as the district attorney in Harrisburg, depends where they're extraditing from. If it's another county, in Pennsylvania, they could be extraditing him for extraditing a person for a whole number of reasons. It's likely because, if you have, let's say, for instance, you commit a person A commits a crime in Ohio, and then person B goes to Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania and commits a crime in Pennsylvania. Well, the police may not immediately file charges in Ohio, but when they do, they'll issue a warrant. At the same time, this individual who committed a subsequent crime in Pennsylvania will have charges filed against him and a warrant issued. Let's say he's picked up in Pennsylvania, put in jail, awaiting trial in a Pennsylvania case, then Ohio is going to want to extradite him from Pennsylvania to Ohio so that he can stand trial for the case out there. State to state, extradition could occur for pretty much any misdemeanor or felony level type crime. Generally not going to happen for summary offenses. It may not happen for low-level misdemeanor offenses. But extradition would certainly happen for felony offenses. So if a person has felonies in 2 different states or 2 different multiple jurisdictions, yeah, they're going to extradite that person all over the place until all their cases are resolved. Ohio. Stephen Parsons, aren't you from Ohio? Wait, you have a house in Ohio, correct? So yeah, to me, Kelly, you're in Ohio. Yeah, I use Ohio as an example because that's where a lot of my cases, I'm in Western Pennsylvania. So usually if I got people with cases out of state, it's going to be the surrounding states. Generally, you're talking Ohio and West Virginia most often ends up being Ohio for whatever reason. So, all right. No, sit down. All must not rise. Please sit down. Stay seated. You don't have to stand up, please. Only when I have my black robe on do I require the gallery to stand. Be seated. Yes, sir. Be seated. Is bad checks extraditable? I'll be honest with you, HM, depends on the amount of money. But it absolutely is. Any felony or misdemeanor, a bad checks is going to be a misdemeanor at the least. If there's enough money involved, it's a felony. It depends on the amount of money. So yeah, it is extraditable. I don't know. It's every DA's office, every judge is a little bit different. So I can't sit here and tell you, oh, this county, Crawford County, Ohio is going to extradite you from, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania for a bad checks case. It could or could not happen. But most likely, if you end up incarcerated in a certain state, you got a misdemeanor or felony in another state, they're going to make sure that you go and you face trial for that. Okay, so you're probably going to be extradited. When I moved here from northern Wisconsin, my debit card got denied. I called my bank. They said most of their fraud occurs in Ohio, so they blocked usage here. Yeah, interesting thing about a lot of these fraud cases, access device fraud, when you're talking about the use of cell phones for fraud or false identity theft, what I have learned is that there are a lot of individuals, I don't know if I wouldn't say they're gangs or networks of people in and around New York City who commit identity theft. And what they will do is they will get fake ID cards, fake debit card, or real debit cards numbers, fake ID cards, and they will drive to Western Pennsylvania and Ohio and purchase vast amounts of products, say from a mall or a store. Okay, try to return them and or either sell them. But I guess the whole point is to go from New York and commit the crime farther away from the motherland, for lack of a better word. But But for whatever reason, Western Pennsylvania and Ohio tends to be a hub for that. I don't have the exact reason why, but it does tend to be a hub for access device fraud, identity theft, etc. So, feel like Jesse James. Does anybody have any questions or issues that they would like to discuss? Why I didn't? Yeah, Taze, I didn't do the show at the beach because I was tired and enjoying my time at the beach. That's it. No good reason really, but it was a really badly needed break, especially from my law practice has just been it's a good thing because I'm busy, but it's grinding. It's been very grinding. So I needed that break. Yeah, exactly. I was a little bit drunk. I really don't even like to drink that much, to be honest, but I did drink on 2 of the nights that I was there. I also picked up this case that I just posted a link to. It's in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania. It's an aggravated assault with a shooting. And I was working on that while I was on vacation because duty calls. And immediately over the weekend, I had to deal with that issue. So check out that article if you want to see an interesting case that I'm working on. Got a question. If a person is out on bail for a felony and gets arrested again, can he make bail again for that charge, even if it is a misdemeanor? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, let's say you pick up a felony and the judge gives you ROR bond, okay, or gives you a monetary bond, and you post that bond and you're released, and then you go and you pick up another misdemeanor. Yeah, now the judge for the misdemeanor is going to look at, you're going to see what's going on and say, oh, this guy has a felony. This guy has a felony, all right, that he posted bond on, gets out, goes, commits another crime. They may give you a higher bond, but again, it all depends on the crime, the individual, their prior history, the exact situation. But if I'll use the example of bad checks, I've had people out on bond with, picked up bad checks, bonded out, bad checks, bonded out, bad checks, bonded out. I've seen that 3-4 cases pending and they're bonded out on all of them. I mean, as long as we're not talking about personal injury crimes or crimes that harm somebody or something like a burglary, yeah, it's not uncommon for person to be bonded out on 3 cases, even if they picked them up while they were already out on bond. That can change, when it comes to theft, etc. If you're talking about extremely high amounts of money, it could be a little bit different. But $1,000 here, a couple thousand here, 100 here on bad checks cases, for example. Yeah, you could be bonded out on 3 subsequent cases. Yeah, the first judge could revoke the bond if he wanted to, if you committed a new crime while you were out on bond. Yes, that judge could revoke the bond. Again, that they generally aren't going to do that, but it depends on the type of crime that you picked up. If you went out and murdered somebody, yeah, you can expect the bond on your bad checks case to get revoked, and you're not going to get bond on the murder. But, again, it just really, truthfully, honestly depends on the crime that we're talking about. I mean, real serious crimes, you can expect the bond to get revoked. But a bunch of sort of, I don't want, petty shit, possession of drugs, etc., they probably won't revoke the original bond. Has about 20 charges and out on probation, even intimidating a witness. This guy keeps getting out. I figure he is an informant now. Yeah, that's possible. He could be out. Cooperation could be one of the reasons that he is out. 20 charges and on probation. Thing is, probation's stickier than bond because if you're out on probation, you pick up a new case, they'll put a detainer on you. Okay. The thing about being out on bond is that you haven't been convicted of any crime yet. Okay. But on probation, you've been convicted of a crime and you've agreed not to get in trouble again. So probation detainers are tougher than bond detainers, oftentimes. Sometimes I feel like Jesse James. Bad checks extraditable. HM, I mean, I don't know what's going on, man. Is somebody in jail? I'd have to know their situation to really tell you about the chances of extradition. No, Taze, I didn't get a chance to look at Peachy Rider, analyze a 1A auditor, Peachy Rider, 1A auditor. I'm going to do it, though. I will do it. I've barely been reading my comments, man. It's just, it's crazy. If you order food from a restaurant that employs a third-party delivery service and you catch the delivery guy eating your food, who's responsible, the restaurant or the delivery company? Well, the restaurant would technically have breached a contract, Ryan. So if the restaurant doesn't get you their food, the food, they breach the contract. You have a right to get your money back or to get your food. You know, to get new food. Okay, wait. All right, third party delivery. Third party. That's a good question. That's a good question. So, it would be all right. There's a difference here between what's good for business and what's legal. So you order Uber Eats and the driver arrives at your door and hands you the cheeseburger and fries that you ordered, and you got about 4 fries and half a cheeseburger with bite marks in it. Okay. So what can you do? Technically you could sue both of them for breach of contract. You could even possibly report the Uber Eats driver to the police. That could be a theft, as ridiculous as it sounds, and I doubt they would even do anything, but they could charge him with some sort of theft. You could sue both of them on for breach of contract. You know, it gets more complicated because you sort of want to know what the agreement is between the third party and the restaurant. And it's also going to matter who you contracted with. If you contracted with the third party or if you contracted with the restaurant. If you paid the third party directly, and now that I think about it, if you pay the third party directly, you're going to have to sue the third party. So that Uber Eats driver, you'd have to sue the Uber guy. You'd have to sue the Uber. You have to sue Uber or DoorDash. And then, DoorDash, yeah, you'd have to sue Uber or DoorDash. McDonald's, the restaurant, that's interesting. The restaurant could possibly go after them as well. I still feel like she's heading for a hard fall. I say restaurant. Just funny, a while back he was in jail and his father died. Next thing you know, he was at his parents' house at the wake. Altha, let me tell you something. I mean, I've seen people with like 10 cases, multiple charges be out. If it's petty shit and the person can keep making bail, they can be out. But once they get on probation, generally it's harder. If he's out and he was on probation, he must have done some time, paid some restitution, or it's possible he's cooperating. Still feel like 25. If someone runs to another country for a bad check charge, does Pennsylvania add extra time on for the offense? That's actually a pretty good question. It depends on the exact circumstances of how the person flees. But they could get a new charge. For fleeing and eluding. However, I don't think generally just going to if someone runs to another country to avoid going to jail for, does PA add extra time on the offense? I'm going to go out on a limb and say no, but I really don't know, because they can't really add extra time onto that offense. They would have to charge him with a new offense. They have to charge that person with a new offense, some sort of fleeing and eluding law enforcement, which is likely possible. Honestly, I've never seen it. Like, I've never seen it. So I hope that helps. You contracted with the restaurant, not DoorDash. Well, it depends who you contracted with, Taze. I mean, I don't know. I don't use DoorDash. It really just depends. But it's you still may have to sue the third party. I would sue them both. In some states, if a person runs out, even out of statute of limitations, stop. Sure, if a person goes to another statute, stop. Then, well, yeah, statute of limitations can be extended if a person is fleeing. Statute of limitations have a whole lot of exceptions out there. It's not really, they're not as black and white as you may think. What if my wife says eats half of my fries on the way home? Well, you could sue your wife, man. You could sue your wife. Judge may laugh at you and give you no money at all, but you could sue her. You may be sleeping on the couch the rest of your life, or she might counter you with a divorce complaint. Stu, thanks. Had delivery guy eat a third of my order of ribs. Was even kind enough to leave the bones, and both companies blaming each other. Again, if you really, I mean, you're going to get an attorney involved. I would sue. I've done that. Like, what a lot of attorneys, this is what prosecutors do, okay? But it's what plaintiffs' attorneys do as well. Plaintiffs' attorneys and prosecutors are similar. Plaintiffs' attorneys sue everybody and then make them fight amongst themselves, okay? That's what prosecutors do, right? They think there's a conspiracy out there. They charge all 5 people until they get one person to cooperate, make them eat each other alive. If you sue anybody who may have some shred of responsibility, they're going to start fighting amongst themselves. I don't know if it's worth it for you to sue, Ryan. But, if you were pissed enough, I'd take them both to small claims court. If it's Uber and McDonald's, you could file charge against each of them in small claims court. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, there is a flight to avoid charge. So that additional charge is what would give you additional time if you flee a case. So if you're fleeing a case, I think one of the elements of that, here's the interesting thing. I believe one of the elements of that is the Commonwealth would have to prove that you knew about the case and that you were traveling specifically to flee that case, which might not always be that easy to prove. Some circumstances it may be, some circumstances it wouldn't be, but I don't think it gets charged in the majority of cases. But it probably gets charged in a lot of them if the prosecutor believes that they have the evidence to prove that particular charge. But yeah, flight to avoid apprehension is going to add some time onto you. I believe it can be a felony. It could add months to years, depending on your prior record score and what else you have going on. With social media platforms and trolls, thanks for that input, Steve. With social media platforms and trolls, there we go. Well, 23 months, that and a whole bunch of other shit. With social media platforms and trolls, at what point does it become something justifying legal action? That's an art of the storm. Thank you for the question. That's highly complicated. I'll do a quick rundown of some things I can say with a pretty good degree of certainty. Is any type of threat, a physical threat, is criminally actionable, which means that you can report that to the police, and if the police, if they have enough evidence, should act on it. I'm not saying they will, but they should. So, in Pennsylvania, for example, terroristic threats is a crime threatening to physically harm someone. And the exact language matters, but a threat to physically harm someone, whether online, in a telephone call, in a letter, through an email, is illegal. So, any type of physical threat of harm is likely going to be legal, especially if that harm is immediate and the threat appears serious. You can file a charge for terroristic threats. Now, as far as calling people names and saying bad things about them, well, that would fall under defamation, slander, libel laws, which means that if the language is the type that would damage someone's reputation and it's false, and it is false, you can sue that person civilly. That's not going to be, the police aren't going to do anything about that. It's not criminal, but you could sue someone civilly for damage to your reputation. But the two key elements, and there are a couple other elements, but the two key elements is that the language used is the type that would damage your reputation. You have to show actual damage to your reputation. And number three, it has to be false. If somebody goes online and says, hey, Bill Clinton, let's say somebody goes online and says, hey, you cheated on your wife. If it's true, you're going to lose a defamation case. You can't bring a defamation. If that person told the truth online about you cheating on your wife, you cannot bring a defamation case because an absolute defense to defamation is the truth. However, if somebody goes online and says you cheated on your wife and it's false, you can sue them for defamation. There's multiple other problems, though, with suing somebody online. Is like these trolls, they hide their identity. They're in different states, different countries. Makes it a true nightmare. Ryan, I'm telling you, man, there may be a degree of liability for both. Okay. Because you contract with the one who has a contract through the other. What I would do is sue both of them and make one of them. But yeah, whoever you paid the money directly to, Taze has a point. If you paid the third party directly, then that's probably going to be your best line of defense. I would sue them both, though. But yeah, the third party made a contract with you to deliver you food, and if their delivery man didn't, ate your food, they're responsible for that. Hear about Ring giving local police departments access to customers' cameras without a warrant or permission. I can already smell the lawsuits coming. Well, I'd look. Well, you say access to customers' cameras without a warrant or permission. Yeah, that could be very well construed as an invasion of privacy, and there could well be a lawsuit there. An interesting twist on that, I would say, is that if the camera is pointed outside the household, if the camera is, say, on the front porch pointed outside the household, you may not have a right to privacy to that type of video. Inside the household is a different story, though. Sounds like a story in the paper would clear that issue up fast, Ryan. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Ryan, take that up the chain with these companies, DoorDash and the restaurant. I mean, I would write a letter. I'd write a letter to corporate. I would send emails. I mean, one time I got on Best Buy's ass and they finally gave me what I was asking for. What if someone tells another individual to kill themselves online? If they don't, so Taze, hey Tom from Southern Indiana, thanks for tuning in. Good friend of mine is from Southern Indiana. He rides his motorcycle out east. He's from Philadelphia, but he posts a lot of pictures online and on Instagram, and it looks beautiful down there. That Taze, that's a good question. That's been in the news lately. This girl was convicted for for telling someone to kill them, for telling this guy to kill himself, and then he went and killed himself. Absent that person actually killing themselves or doing damage to themselves, I'm not sure if that is an actual threat and or a terroristic threat, or if it's even civilly actionable. I'm really not sure. I tend to think that that would somehow fall under the definition of terroristic threats. I would need to specifically research it to give you a good answer on that. They supposedly don't need a warrant because of a contract that allows access to Ring's database. Your video feed goes to the cloud and becomes Ring's property. Well, if that's the case, Art of the Storm, then, you know, a key part of what was written in there is that police departments access the customers without permission. Well, when those people buy that Ring, they may be giving permission in some way, shape, or form. So there may be some sort of disclaimer inside the small print on your Ring document in which you're surrendering a certain degree of privacy by using the product. Is it better just to consent to search when being pulled over for traffic violation as far as less time wasted? Dana's son, I mean, look, if you got nothing to hide, why not let them search? If you have nothing to hide, sure, go ahead. I mean, yeah, it might get you out of there quicker if you have nothing to hide. But just know that your rights are that you don't have to consent to search. And if you deny consent to search, sure, they're going to give you a harder time. They may get a warrant. They may get a dog. They may impound your car. Who knows? What's your take on that girl? I'm very familiar with that case. She really, really went too far. You know, I remember reading about it, Kelly. I would have to read it a little bit more. You know, I believe a jury convicted her. It's the issue there is causation. Is, you know, can a person's words alone be enough to for society to want to hold that person liable for a death that another individual inflicts? I mean, here's an interesting comparison is, you know, if I tell person A to go kill, well, if I contract with person A to go kill person B, I can be held liable for that murder. If I make an agreement with this person and take an overt action in order to have them kill another person, I could potentially be held liable through accomplice liability or conspiracy liability for killing someone else. So is it really that different? Instead of telling, you know, you got A, B, and C. If A tells B to kill C, A could be liable for that. Is it really that different when a person just tells another person to kill themselves? It's sort of like a contracted killing. A guy that called a woman car salesperson in PA and she sued him and won $1,000. Why give up? Yeah, I mean, Trucker JP, I agree, man. Why give up your Fourth Amendment? I wouldn't tell anybody to give up their Fourth Amendment, but you know, the question was, could it be quicker if you let them search? The answer is yeah, it could be. Sometimes they'll do a half-ass search, or sometimes, and again, I'm not telling anybody to ever give up their Fourth Amendment right. Okay, I'm just giving you examples here. I've seen situations where my clients have consented to search, and after the officer got consent, they decided not to search because, you know, the officer must not have believed that this person had anything to hide. So when the person in the car was like, yeah, go ahead and search, you know, the officer walked back to his car, came back, like issued a ticket or whatever, and then never searched the car. He was just trying to play a mind game. You know, they're trying to read you. It's a form of verbal jujitsu that they're playing with you when they're asking you questions. Yeah, Taze, I agree, man. I mean, it's they aren't very neat in the search. It's really crazy thing. It is true. I remember reading the text messages this girl sent to this guy, and it was like she almost helped him plan the killing. He was like, well, I was going to kill myself at 6 o'clock today, but A, B, and C happened. And she was like, well, why don't you just kill yourself at 8? She was like, it will still be very easy for you to do. Oh, well, I didn't think of that. And then she's like, why don't you do A, B, C, and D? And this will all make it easier for you to kill yourself. And you really just don't need to waste your time. You need to just go kill yourself right now. Like, her messages were pretty nuts. I do think it's a bit of a stretch, though. If I was on that jury, I don't know if I would have convicted. I really don't. And I don't really remember what happened with that case. Yeah, she did a lot. She did do a lot. It was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy. Like, um, it's up to a jury. Yeah, she was convicted. With this, what if someone is posting an individual's address and personal information online using a screen name? Yeah, I mean, you're talking about like doxing somebody. I don't believe that doxing in and of itself is actually illegal. But most social media companies, so if an account, a user's doing that on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, generally these companies, as much as many things as there are to complain about them when it comes on upon infringing speech, etc. They also do a lot of things correctly, and I believe that that is one of them. They take doxing very seriously. I don't think doxing should be allowed. I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on or what the issue is. Okay, left, right, up, down, posting that type of information puts people in danger. And I don't believe that it's illegal in any way, but report it to the format or the carrier that is publishing that information. Usually they'll take action, but as far as legal action, I don't believe that there is anything, at least nothing. Now, if actual harm came from it, you may be able to file some sort of civil suit. I'd really have to look. I'd really have to research that. That's an interesting issue, though. Very interesting. So I'm really not into country music, but that's George Strait's Troubadour. I mean, that song is just in my head. Still feel 25 most of the time. Is policy in public facilities lawful? Dana, I don't understand that question. Can you make it a little clearer? Do you mean video recording? Yeah, in a lot of public facilities, depending where in the public facility you're recording, it is allowed, it's lawful, and it's legal. But it's got to be reasonable. Still feel 25 most of the time. Yeah, I addressed that in depth. I can't remember exactly what the answer is. I mean, law just goes in and out of my brain, in and out, it's in one ear, out the other. It's what we say about law school. I did research that. I believe it's something along the lines that for example, these auditors go into police stations. Well, in the hallway of a police station, yeah, you can walk in with the camera and you can record. Now, going back into the police office, etc., that's not allowed because that can interfere with police activities. And even though it's a public facility, there is an expectation of privacy that allows them to do their job. But in a waiting room of a police station, yes, generally it's going to be allowed. Now, there is an open question as to if there are individuals in there, like other private citizens, whether that recording infringes upon their right to privacy. I don't believe that has been extensively litigated, but usually, recording in certain common areas of public facilities is going to be allowed as long as it doesn't conflict with some other interest. That's why, again, in police stations, you can only record in, the little common public area. You can't go back in the station and record. That's not allowed, even though it is a public facility. most of the time. No, boom, boom, boom. I still feel 25 most of the time. Anybody else got questions? Doctor's offices. I can tell you without a doubt that nobody can go back into the actual offices of a doctor's office with a camera. Like that's just no way. Legal to record audio without the other person's consent. But again, it is a little unclear in, like, say, the waiting room. But most likely the answer is, I mean, a doctor's office is a private facility, so I don't believe you're going to be able to get away with that at a doctor's office or a hospital. Um, Again, yeah, the waiting room is like generally a weird gray area. I don't know if the courts have found a right to privacy in those areas. I would say that you probably can't record in doctors' offices or in hospitals if that's their policy and they make it clear. Because those are generally, for the most part, you're talking private organizations. And you don't have the same First Amendment rights in a private at a private location. You just do not. You really don't. Yeah, VA hospital would make sense, Days. That's going to cause a weird thing because it's a government hospital. I didn't know they did that. But I mean, it's kind of funny and makes sense that they do. Yeah, because now you have a public hospital. Whereas private hospitals, I can almost guarantee you you're not going to be allowed to record. A public hospital, I mean, these guys are nuts. Yeah, I would argue, again, it would probably need to be litigated in the courts. I don't know if there's case law on it, but even the problem with a hospital is you're dealing with really sensitive information to the degree that the people in there probably have a right to privacy, even if it's in a public place. So you have a right to private, right? That makes sense, right? So normally you could record in a public place, but when people are going in there with very sensitive issues, there's not the same, First Amendment right that the public needs to know this information. So I would say that, a private hospital can definitely stop you, a private doctor's office. VA hospital is a little interesting twist, but I would say even the VA, they could stop you from recording. Yeah, it's not a good idea. No, you can't stop someone from filming you in public. There is wiretap. There are wiretap issue laws that I really don't know in depth, where if you record someone without their consent, the thing is that it's not necessarily illegal to record them, but that you can't use that recording in court. It's not admissible evidence. You can't stop someone from filming you in public. No. So if you go downtown for work every day and somebody's videotaping you while you walk across the street to your office, you're not going to stop them. Now, what you possibly could do is if they're doing it relentlessly and continuously, you may have a case for stalking. Serious legal pressure to change the way some of these A1 guys operate. From what I've seen in exploring these issues, there are a lot of police stations that take the issue of auditors very seriously, and they're applying pressure in all the points and areas where they can in order to crack down on these individuals. But I don't think that there's any, mass concerted effort to do so. You're talking about individual stations that could see this as a problem. When you take, for example, like the New York City Police Department, it's probably the last of their worries. An embezzlement, how hard is it to defend an embezzlement case? Right, stalking. I mean, that's the thing. If you're getting recorded over and over, it could be stalking, even if it's in a public place. How hard is it to defend? I haven't done that many embezzlement cases. I've done a little bit of embezzlement work. It really depends on each particular case and how much evidence that the Commonwealth has. And I don't even know all the elements of embezzlement off the top of my head. I will tell you that what I've seen in those cases is if the person who embezzled the money can come up with the money and pay it back, it usually makes things happen. Usually makes things go a lot easier for that individual. But it's going to depend on each individual case, because embezzlement can really run the gamut of like an accountant to ripping off a company, to business partners, to family members, and the individual facts of each case are going to be very complicated. I'll be 25 most of the time. Can't audio record confidential conversations in a lot of states. That's why security cameras don't do audio. There you go. That may or may not be true, but I'll take Taze's word for it. He's pretty well versed. 25. And Kelly, innocent until proven guilty. You are cloaked in the presumption of innocence, which is a constitutional right. I mean, one thing about being a lawyer is you just see how often people lie. I mean, that's the biggest part of my job. Every case I get, there's lies on one side or the other. So what do you believe? Yeah, I air quote everything because I don't know what to believe until I have evidence. Show me the money. Auditors call for floods. Leon Valley trying to pass a law calling flood a felony. Still feel 35 most of the time. Any more questions? I'll take one final question. Otherwise, I'm going to call it a night. I know it's a short show. I aim to go for 2 hours. I need a weekend to recover from my vacation, if that makes sense. At QT gas stations in Phoenix, they post signs saying audio and video recording. So maybe if they post a sign telling you about the audio recording, it's legal. It's going to be state to state. Again, Taze may be correct that some states can't record confidential. Some states you can, I believe certain states, and I believe in Pennsylvania, you can record it, but you can't necessarily use it in court. You can record it, but then it can't be used as evidence against someone in a court of law. Yeah, there could even be county and city ordinances. You're absolutely correct. If a certain state, state law is going to override county, but a certain state may be silent on it or not very restrictive, and then the local governments decide to make more restrictive laws. It's just I haven't really researched it to be able to tell anybody. It definitely varies state to state, and certainly without consent. I do know in Pennsylvania, confidential, like a telephone conversation that one party records, if they turn that over to the police can't use it unless the other party consented to it. Most of the time. Or unless you have a warrant. Huh. I don't know. What are the flood calls days? What are flood calls? Like they make false reports, fake calls about floods? I still feel the 25 most of the time. um yeah, I seen Injustice for All. It's been so, yeah, it's Al Pacino. um I'll tell you what should happen is you're going to get a mistrial. So if a defense attorney tells a jury that his client's guilty, um, the client should fire that attorney and ask for a mistrial. A good judge, a good judge would call for a mistrial in and of himself. Otherwise, if the judge lets the case go to the jury and the jury finds the person guilty, that's going to be immediate. I'm talking immediately appealed and litigated, and that defendant is going to get a new trial. And that attorney, he could be sued for malpractice for doing something like that. So that's a little nuts. Yeah, disbarment. It could really run up against the rules of the professional rules of conduct for an attorney. I can tell you though, most likely though, that trial would result in a mistrial. I mean, a good prosecutor might even come forward and say, "Judge, we need to do this again." And a mistrial doesn't mean that the person gets off. It just means that you have to have another trial. Yeah, it was Pacino. No, Dustin Hoffman wasn't in that. Steel feet. Yeah, that's like false reports, Taze. That stuff's definitely illegal. They may be tightening up the law in order to go after these people making these false sort of claims. Yeah, disbarment, I don't know. It depends on the exact circumstances. I mean, and the attorney's reasons for doing that. I honestly don't know. I mean, I don't think they would just automatically say you're disbarred. I think what happened? Were you drunk? Were you on drugs? Were you mentally ill? If you had some mitigating circumstance, you may not result in disbarment. I mean, usually, the law, the state licensors are not going to just, they're going to give you a couple of chances, but it would definitely result in disciplinary action. Temporary insanity. Yeah, I mean, look, if the lawyer, was like an alcoholic or had a drug addiction, which happens a lot in this profession, it may not result in disbarment, but it might. You just have to have a new trial. And trust me, that judge, you'd probably never want to do another trial in front of that judge again, because that judge would be pissed. I mean, prosecutors and defense attorneys, if you're an attorney and you take a case, you have a duty, and it's in the rules of professional conduct, to zealously advocate for your client. Again, regardless of truth, you're supposed to zealously advocate for your client. And what we're doing here as a society is we're relying on a system, and we're trusting the system, and the system is not perfect. It's not always right, but we're relying on the system to be correct and fair most of the time. You're never going to get a perfect system. And the way the system operates in an adversarial system like the one in the United States is, the defense goes as hard as they can, the prosecution goes as hard as they can, and then the jury decides where the truth is, possibly somewhere in the middle. Kelly, thanks for tuning in. Next week, I'll have more energy. I'll go a little longer. I'm about to go to bed as well. Trust the flawed system. Yeah, man. SoCal. I mean, look, of course it's a flawed system. There will never be a perfect system. Every system is flawed. It's like Winston Churchill said about democracy. It's the worst form of government except for all the rest. There will never be a perfect system of justice. Group of auditors gave out area code and prefix of a town that one of them was arrested in. They told their followers to call random numbers to wake up the whole town. Wow. Wow. I mean, that is just that's that's terrible, and I hope that the police researched that and investigated it and prosecuted everybody involved to the fullest extent of the law. Because that is just that's like I mean, it's almost like a form of soft terrorism. That's probably a strong word, but that type of thing really, really makes me mad. So I hope that the people responsible for it are held responsible. Yeah, drop it in. I'd be interested to see that. That's the funny thing about technology is in many ways as a society we're more distant from each other, but we're all at each other's fingertips. It's scary. It's scary. Taze, drop it to me in an email. I'm gonna go, guys. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Look forward to some more videos and me being back on here on a weekly basis. I'm gonna try to get more guests on here. Maybe do some special topics. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm gonna head out. Have a terrific night.